Welcome to Uncover the Human, where every conversation revolves around enhancing all the connections in our lives.
Whether that's with our families, co-workers, or even ourselves.
When we can be our authentic selves, magic happens. This is Alex Cullimore.
And this is Cristina Amigoni.
Let's dive in.
This episode includes our interpretations of copyrighted works done by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or iPEC.
Welcome back, Cristina. We are here in our Core Dynamics series, continuing our influencers work. And this time we have one of the fun but fairly straightforward, thankfully, influencers, physical influencers.
Yes, it's kind of nice to get to the physical one because you get a little break from the deep look in the onion that's all the demons are sitting at. And you just
I think you just guaranteed we're going to end up finding demons in the physical.
No, there are no demons in the physical. It's very straightforward. You sleep, you eat healthy, you exercise, and you do some breathing and you're good.
I don't even know why we're doing this. This is going to be the shortest podcast episode ever. So simple.
Let's see how quickly that house of cards falls down.
No, you highlighted the key points here. When you think about physical, it's about kind of your well-being and your readiness. Are you healthy? Have you slept enough? How do you feel about your own body image? How do you feel about your fitness? What's your how much have you exercised, and how is that helping or hurting you? Are you in an injury? Do you have illness? Are you really focusing on nutrition and hydration? Are you in touch with your breathing? So all of those things that are really the physical portions of our existence that influence, of course, all the other influencers, as well as they have the ability to influence our ability to show up with full energy or depleted energy.
Yeah, I like the physical piece, not just because it's an easier one most of the times, but it's because you start seeing all the connecting dots. So it's like, oh, I haven't slept last night, which is going to impact my concentration and focus, which is a mental influencer, which is going to impact how I emotionally react to things because, well, I lack of sleep. And so I may just, react and instead of pausing and respond because I don't have the energy, the physical energy to pause. I may not want to talk to people today because I'm half zombied out from not sleeping. And so all those things start connecting the dots. And then like, oh, well, I don't want to talk to people today. And one of my values is human connection. So then tomorrow I'm going to be mad or depressed or sad or all of the above because I didn't have any human connections the day before because I didn't sleep the night before. So that's where the ball gets rolling pretty fast on all the influencers connecting to each other.
That's where you start somewhere physical and end up with demons and onions.
Yes. Demons in the onion layers.
I just have this vision of demons with onion breath. So it's a really just extra layer of I'm not sure I want to face this.
Yeah. My vision is my picture is more of tiny little evil Shreks in the middle of onion layers. So you peel the onion layers and there's a bunch of tiny little evil Shreks. Ogres are like onions. You're peeling onions. They smell like onions.
Pixar, or maybe it was Disney, I don't know, DreamWorks, whatever did Shrek, sponsored this episode.
Yes. We're going to have onion soup for lunch after this.
And it's going to remind us of the deep layers that we have to unpack.
Yes. And the easy influencer.
When it comes to things like the physical influencer, we think about things like sleep, health, exercise, and this is where it's a great place to kind of think about all the language that we use when we use things like shoulds, have to, need to. I need to eat better. I should work out more. I have to get out and exercise today. I mean, these are the times where you can find those blocks of where that influencer is kind of dragging us down, or it's creating a different mental block or clouding our clarity. And it can be filled with all kinds of limiting beliefs, things like, well, healthy food just doesn't taste that good, or it's too expensive, or I don't have time to exercise, or, whatever our beliefs are that end up coming up around our physical influencers. This is the chance to kind of unpack those and understand what helps us show up best when in terms of physical influence, and what might detract, and how can we change those when they are detracting.
Yeah. All of that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about onion soup right now. But I would never have onion soup because it's too high sodium and I don't actually function well on high sodium. There's a whole circling back to the physical influencers and knowing myself.
So interestingly enough, that's an interesting example because you could potentially change the sodium levels since onions don't come with, sodium themselves. Like you could probably influence the sodium level in that and then have a totally different relationship to what could potentially be very bland onion soup.
Indeed. Yes. Yes. So should we get coaching?
Sure. Let's jump on into it. This one's a quick one to think about. So you want to coach or coachee?
Up to you.
All right. I will coach then. So thinking about a time. So if you were to think about a time when your physical influencers were causing some stress or resistance, maybe some lower engagement, what were those circumstances?
Well, I've already mentioned two. Lack of sleep. That definitely has a huge impact on the performance of any level, especially concentration and focus. If I have to do heads down work, it's very difficult if I haven't slept that well. I also usually sleep really well, and I think we've talked about this in some of the spiritual and other influencers on how if I am not sleeping, then I have to figure out what's causing the not sleeping. And sometimes it is maybe another physical influencers like pain. Or an injury or illness. And so it's very straightforward and easy to navigate. And sometimes it's, values mismatch or, more brain and heart stuff that's keeping me up and making me think. So lack of sleep is a big one. From a nutrition and hydration point of view, I'm also pretty strict. It took me a long time to learn how I can be more optimally best, or at least less hulky, if that's a word.
If I can skip past hangry and go straight to hulky.
Yes. If I can keep Hulk, to be smart Hulk and not, old Hulk. Nutrition is a big one for me. So, and hydration. So, for example, I drink a gallon of water or tea a day, and that's the minimum. As soon as I have less, I will get headaches and I will just feel physically disturbed, which then goes into mental fogness and mentally disturbed. And in the hydration piece, I also have to fairly strictly, well, I'll say very strictly because I never do, is making sure that I do have the gallon before I start having any alcohol. And so alcohol at lunch, it's not a thing that I do anymore because it's pretty hard to drink a gallon of water before lunchtime sometimes. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of bathroom breaks. So yes,
different
and
physical
then
influencer, feeling the pain of the bladder. Yes.
Yeah. And even in the alcohol, I went from drinking pretty much anything, beer, cocktails, whatever, to now sticking only with wine. I think we actually we were in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, southeastern Missouri, which was actually beautiful and not a place that I ever thought I would go to. And we were out at a restaurant, and it was a local restaurant, and so wine wasn't exactly the top of the list or even the middle of the list. It wasn't the thing to order, let's just say it that way. And so I ordered a beer, which was probably the first time I had beer in at least like 7 to 10 years. And so, but I knew that I had to pace myself and not drink at all and do certain things to not have the beer effect on my sleep later on that night.
There's all excellent awareness of what the things that you've already done. Sounds like you've already gone on a journey on a number of these angles, whether it's hydration, nutrition, sleep, understanding the impact. Also a great description of sleep being like a spiritual influence. Like something is kind of messing with some kind of like values, that'll lose sleep. That loss of sleep then creates a mental fog. So that you got like 4 influencers compounding on each other, which is why we talked about spiritual often being such a deep one. So you've got all kinds of great structures in place, systems, understanding of yourself, and what will help, what has been a positive, or what has helped at least keep you even for all of your physical influencers. If you think about the things that you can do physically that particularly enhance your energy, what comes to mind?
I would say the nutrition, the hydration, and the sleep, but also, I don't know if it's a physical influence. I guess it's a physical activity. So I will slap it in. It could be something else influencer too, but
It's
meditation.
exercise. Yeah. Oh, hey, nice.
Yeah, meditation is a big one. I started TM, so Transcendental Meditation, over 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And one of the challenges that I made for myself was to meditate at least once a day, and for the first year or so, twice a day, for 23 minutes each. And I have only missed one day because of an airport delay. Actually, yes, an airplane delay. And so I was counting on meditating on the plane, and then it never happened, and then it missed. But meditation, which is a physical, mental, and spiritual activity, so it's everything, and emotional activity. So it's all the influencers at once. But even just taking the time to do that as the physical regiment has made a huge difference in my performance and how I show up.
So I'm gonna stack questions here because I think the first one is easier, but I'm curious. First question: what made you pick 23 minutes? That's a very specific number. And second question is then like, what are those you just talked about the benefits of that? So let's get deeper into that and like what those benefits are and what you notice. But first I'm just genuinely curious about that 23 number.
It's actually not, I didn't pick it. So part of going through the TM process is you actually go through a group coaching session to be able to do TM, or at least this is when it was happening. And so they teach you about it. They explain how it works. And in that process, they actually tell you, like, this is how long we want you to meditate. And it is kind of based, I think it's based on your lifestyle, your current level of stress, the things that are bothering you and not bothering you, your ability in different ways. There's a huge questionnaire that they go through, and then they say like, okay, we recommend the 23 minutes twice a day. I have gone down to most days I do once a day, but when I can, I do twice. And they also give you a mantra. And so then you kind of have these given things. And then after that, you understand how it works because they walk through the process. And that's basically it. Benefits. So the benefits pieces, tons. It's interesting when you go through the course, the TM course, they explain it as when things happen, you become a hard rubber ball, basically, rolling down the street. So before TM or before meditation, you're much softer, which means every pebble that you hit and every little grain or every big rocks, it makes a dent in the ball, or it becomes lodged in. It becomes part of the ball. The more you do meditation, and TM specifically, or at least this is the analogy they use for TM, is that ball becomes harder and harder and harder, so that you may feel the pebble or the rock, but it doesn't become part of you. You just kind of keep going. And it's one of those things where, it's kind of like trust the process in coach training, where you're like, okay, I get the words, but I have no idea. The feeling is not quite there. I have no idea what you're saying. But this was the same when they were explaining. I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Sure. I'm not quite feeling it. I understand it with words. My logic understands it, but my heart is not quite getting it until you get it, until you start experiencing and you notice that things that in the past may have bothered you and become part of your reactions and part of the ball in the past. Now you're just kind of like, oh, that went quickly. Okay, well, guess that's done. So that's a huge benefit. Some of the coaching aspirations, actually, meditation really helps with non-judgment. In the meditation, you stop judging your own stuff. And so that helps you to judge others less. TM specifically, they've done a ton of studies, and they keep doing them on the physical benefits of that, which are much lower blood pressure. They've actually have tons of studies on PTSD. People with PTSD, they actually are able to pass or to not cure it, but to manage it much better. People with high blood pressures or heart problems, there's a lot of physical evidence that TM helps with that. And I would say, yes, just generally speaking, even things like, my stress, shoulders and neck pains, they're usually causes of stress. I rarely have them, and I used to live with that. And so, yeah, those are some of them.
That's really cool. First of all, I like the description of how you got to the 23 minutes, because that's such just to call it out specifically, great frameworks for thinking about how to build things into your life and new, especially new practices. Like, hey, how much do I really have time for? I mean, you can read, a blog on exercise. They'll tell you need to work out, an hour a day or something, but how realistic is it to jump into an hour a day if you're in that habit, or if you're not that close to that? So what a great way of like having a bunch of different, questions to answer so that you can figure out like what's realistic, what would help, and what can I actually like fit in that will help me develop this as a practice, so I can try and see some of the benefits and then live with this long enough to move past the logical understanding of being overball and into the more emotional understanding of like, oh, okay, so if I'm hardened, that's what this feels like. It doesn't feel like it's like bouncing in. I don't notice this as much, and you get this whole journey that goes in there. As you look into the future and you've got all these systems in place, and I'm not saying there's any that would have to be added, but are there any things that you're curious about adding to some of your physical regimens that maybe just you're curious about trying to see what the benefits might be?
Yes, the one piece that I it's like on and off the wagon, and I'm not too happy about. It's one of those shoulds that becomes a would like, that becomes sometimes, that becomes back to a should. And yes, it's the exercise piece. So I love walking, so I do that quite a bit, not as much as, again, I should, or I would like to. I definitely have to be better at have to. I'm using all the words.
Yeah, here we are. This is the example.
Stepping into all the potholes. But I would like to, actually. I want to figure out what kind of exercise. I struggle with, I see types of exercise that I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to do that. Like I used to do yoga all the time. Not all the time, but I did yoga for quite a bit. And then I stopped. And so the thought of yoga to me is really good, but then the motivation to actually sit on a mat in some dark basement room is 0 to none. And going to a class, it's even less. I'm not a class person when it comes to exercise. That's why I love walking and being able to do the walking. I tried running, and then joints started getting painful, and so I stopped that. So there's various pieces of activities that I would like to do more, but then there's mental constraints where that I don't get past to make them happen. For example, like if I could, and I know I can if I actually got out there and figure it out, but tennis is the sport that I've always loved, and I could play tennis for hours every single day. And the main thing that's stopping me now is the fact that you can't play tennis alone. So then it requires the effort of, now I got to find somebody who can play tennis with me at the same time that I can. And now we're talking about the weather, and is it too hot? And now it's snowy, and now it's rainy, and there's no tennis courts. And so it's not easy enough to just do whenever I want it. So the exercise piece, I'm still trying to figure out. It's like, how do I get there?
Yeah. That makes sense. You got good awareness of the things that you like, but so you already suggested some of the things that maybe are difficult, like yoga. You don't want to do classes. Totally makes sense. Have you considered exploring, or are there any ways you would explore yoga outside of like a classroom, or changing some of the, like, I totally understand the feeling of like, I don't want to do this in a dark basement room. That makes sense. Like that might not be the most inviting. It might not feel like it's the most comfortable, and it might not be the chance to give it the fair shake that you might want to give it. What kind of situation would be ideal to try something like that?
It's a good question, because I've also tried it with a yoga teacher, and well, I liked the discipline. It was too long. So I'm also like, besides walking, which I could walk for hours. I mean, one of my goals when I go to New York and visit is to walk 10 miles a day, because I want to walk every single day, all day long. But outside of that, anything that's more structured, as in like staying in one place, staying in one room, follow instructions, those things outside of tennis I have about a patience of 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. And so when I tried it with a personal instructor, it was more like 50 to an hour. And I was like, I can't, that's just not like, it starts breaking up the day, and now the before and after becomes an hour and 15, an hour and a half, and then it becomes a problem with scheduling, and I have meetings, and there's just all sorts of other things that I integrate to make it more difficult, because I know they're all things that I could move aside, but I don't, which also tells me I'm not passionate enough, because as I said, if it were tennis and it was their court person weather, I would do it every day, all day. And so I can't remember what the question is, but what else I could do? I love the outside, being outside. So that's an element of, if I look at exercising every day in some form, being out in the fresh air is a requirement unless it's snowing and I can't, or raining. So which also prohibits the yogas and the Peloton and these other things that I've started and stopped and started and stopped and started and stopped.
Those are all great awareness pieces. So, there's like some external things that you'd want to be able to address with tennis, being able to have the court, the weather, the person to go play with. Anytime there is something with tennis, those are some potential obstacles. So that would be the place to look at if you wanted to like rearrange some of the situation and remove some of those externals. And then also the time constraint on something like yoga. An hour is too long to commit because you don't have the passion to do that, which totally makes sense. It's not a practice that's important enough to devote an hour to. We all have choices we have to make with our time. So absolutely, that would be too much time, especially if it's not something that feels like it's important enough to like, hey, I really want to make that hour commitment. So we have options. So we can either continue to discuss like ways to remove some of those externals around tennis. We can talk about some of the internals in yoga, or we can wrap with the idea that this is kind of the incremental progress. I want to get your opinion on where you'd like to go.
Let's leave the demons and the onions and move on.
One last thing though, if you would be open to a suggestion, would you be open to a suggestion?
Yes.
One thing that really helped me is Peloton has like little workouts that are like 10, 15, 20 minutes. And that was the only way that I could get into any kind of strength training. Because forever I was like, yeah, I should like try and lift. I don't do it now. So this didn't last forever, but it did last for about a year. Like I could only do it when I was like, oh yeah, I could just do like a 20-minute class. Because then it wasn't like, oh yeah, let me like try and slot in an hour here. And oh, nope, I just got called. So I guess that just won't happen today. Like, so those are the one thing I've found that helped. And it's not to say it would help, but if you're interested, that is the only thing that I found that removed some of that time constraint. So I was like, it's a 20-minute. They'll give you a beginning, middle, and an end, and you'll be done in 20.
Yeah. No, that does help. And I've done some of those as well. I have to balance and find the ones that I, one, don't get bored with, two, don't end up being either too hard or I push more than suggested, which then turns into I'm sore for the next 3 days, which then makes me quit because I'm like, I don't want to be sore every single time I exercise. So there's all sorts of things. And also the general, that doesn't mean that I know that there's a solution. I need to be more dedicated to finding the solution.
I feel you on that one. I didn't ever get past that first stage where I'd push too hard and then end up like hurt for 3 days or a week and be like, well, I'm never coming back to this. Like, I kept hitting that wall over and over again until eventually I signed up for a half marathon and had to like keep going. And I was like, okay, this better be incremental then, because I can't kill myself every week and then hate this.
Yeah. I've actually found it interesting because I was using the Peloton bike for quite a while. And I found that was better in the sense of I was much better at pacing myself so that I wouldn't get sore and quit. And I did that. That one I did for a while, every other day. So it was fairly consistent. And then
life happens.
Went traveling. Life happened. Got bored. I get bored. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Walks, skiing, tennis are the things I don't get bored doing. Everything else I get bored.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Good awareness.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. Shall we reverse?
Sure. Let's reverse this.
All right. So when you think about the list of, physical influencers or areas that help you reach peak performance, which ones are your shoulds from that list?
Sleep is always a should. I keep having an unhealthy relationship with sleep. when I do get enough of it, I can feel the benefits. I often either stay up later than I should, or just I'll sleep in then on the other side a little bit more than I should, or I will just cut it out and then just have a short sleep cycle, which occasionally is doable, but it's increasingly less doable, especially if I do that often. So I think that's one thing that definitely feels like it comes up as a should a lot. I should sleep better, and I don't. Nutrition, I've actually been making some good progress on. I like to intentionally move towards things like plant-based diets. And there was a little bit in there earlier in the year where I was not nearly as focused on that and definitely kind of fell off that wagon. And in the last about month and a half or so, I've particularly gotten back into like, hey, this as an intention is where I'm going. You know, if I happen to be out at a good restaurant and something happens to have meat and it looks, you know, particularly like it's a special or something that you're not going to get again, I'm not worried about having that then. But overall, and especially when making food at home, we haven't brought meat into the house for a while, and so that's definitely making some good progress there. So I think sleep, and then that kind of dovetails into some exercise where occasionally I get into like I should be doing this more, and I kind of know that I should be, and don't necessarily get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very insightful, especially the sleep piece that you brought up multiple times. There's the should all over the sleep.
All over the place.
Should have a better, a healthier relationship with the sleep. I should go to bed earlier. I shouldn't sleep as much the next day. It's just, there's two words in those sentences, sleep and should.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about that one, what is the impact of the unhealthiness of your sleep cycle?
It's usually a ripple effect. It itself, I mean, first of all, when you don't get enough sleep, it's definitely like it becomes the mental focus becomes more difficult, which can also be anywhere from not being able to focus on tasks at hand or not having as much ability to jump into something, as well as it becomes sometimes harder to have like emotional regulation, like at least as strong as I would like it to be, or know it can be. If you haven't slept enough and you're really tired, occasionally it's easier to like lose the patience or just be like, look, I don't have time to like unpack this with you. I'm exhausted. Like I don't have it. And so it doesn't help with like, it can be harder on finding places like the coaching headspace and getting into being able to help people and having that space of curiosity and non-judgment can be harder to get to. And then also, if I'm staying up too late, there's a good chance, there's like a 90+% chance that I'm doing that on the couch, crunched up, watching Netflix, at which point I'm going to wake up, stiff, and I'm already like in a weird position sitting on a couch for too long. And then that, if I sleep in, or if that causes like, I'll just be sleepy the next day. So either I will try and sleep a little bit later and thus miss the chance to work out or do some exercise, which usually gives some energy, or I will work out without that energy and feel depleted, and it's not a great workout, it's not a great experience, and I've had less sleep. So there's a nice myriad of little ripple effects.
Just as many as the shoulds.
Yes.
Around sleep. So if you think about your ideal
mm-hmm.
relationship with sleep, what would it look like?
The ideal is being able to pause time, get as much sleep as possible, and then wake up and be and be ready. That
how about the humanly on Earth today ideal
within the laws of physics? Fine. All right.
For now, you never know what comes up tomorrow, but as of today, we haven't figured out how to stop time. So
I think as if I could get at least 7 hours of sleep, and ideally occasionally 8. I'm kind of messing around with what the ideal is. I know that for some people who've taken much more deliberate time to practice with this, they get answers that are kind of all over the map, that they can do well with like 7.5, or they really are ideal at like 8.5. Those tend to be the limits that you mostly see people in. So I'd like to get at least like consistently 7. I do that fairly well now, and it's getting better than it was before. I used to be mostly at like 6. So ideally I'd get that and probably go to bed sometime around like 11, wake up between 6:30 and 7, and that would give enough time in the morning to do things like go for a run or do whatever else, or have a time to just sit and do like reflection or journaling work, which is the other cost. If I lose that morning time, I don't have the time for reflection and some of that personal development time that has been traditionally especially helpful in reducing mental clutter and just feeling more energized in the day. So it would be probably falling asleep around that 11 o'clock hour and then getting up around 6:30 to 7 to really kind of be ready for having a nice little space in the day to get ready, center myself, and dive in.
Mm-hmm. Good self-awareness, especially on the other side of the should, is like if you can get to that waking up at a certain hour, then it impacts wanting some personal development and exercise and other physical influencers, which will then be influencing the rest of your day and the other performances. So what's stopping you from going to bed at 11 and waking up at 6?
So interestingly, one of the things that first comes to mind is, as you know, I live in basically a 5-story walk up. So like we have a very tall townhome, narrow tall townhome, and so our bedroom's on top, and the living room's on the bottom. So doing things like sitting and watching Netflix tends to happen in the living room, and then you think about the actual physical effort of climbing yourself 2 flights of stairs when you're already tired. The couch starts to feel more appealing, even if you know you're slowly accruing more and more of that debt. So there's part of that, and then also knowing the things that will have to be done once you get upstairs. Like I want to like shower before I go to bed. I want to do this. So like if that's the case, then knowing there's another 15, 20 minutes or whatever on top of climbing up 2 flights of stairs doesn't help. So a couple times recently, actually, I've worked out like in the afternoon or something, and I'll shower then. And so if I can clear out some of those things ahead of time, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, I just have to get up and walk up to bed, or I can just sit upstairs and have an evening upstairs instead of going to the living room. So either of those I think would help move the needle a bit and make that a lot less internal resistance to get to bed on the time that I'd like to get to.
What would you think that internal resistance comes from, besides the 5 flight of stairs and the 20 minutes to shower and brush your teeth?
I think part of it's just not wanting to miss out. It's kind of a hangover from previous times in my life where I've spent at the job that we met at, I would spend frequent days where sometimes I'd be working till like 2 in the morning. And so now when I get these opportunities just to like have evenings where there's an evening, I hold on to it, and I want to like kind of experience as much as possible in that time. And so I think at this point it's now tilted the balance where it's not just like experiencing those things, it's now taking away from the next day by doing that. So just maybe acknowledging that and knowing that it's there's internal attachments to trying to soak up as much as possible in the evenings, but understanding that is coming at a cost for other evenings maybe would help like even that out and not make it just like not end the story at, no, I want to do the most with this current evening, but remember that there's evenings before and evenings after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like good self-awareness, and the block of missing out could have a big influence in the not wanting to walk up the steps and get to bed in time, which is totally perfectly normal. Makes total sense. So when you think about in the past times when you actually have succeeded, even for just a couple of days or for multiple days, to get the type of sleep that you need, what were those circumstances? If they exist.
They do. It's not 100% of the time that I am in unhealthy sleep habits, just 80%. So
you think about the 20%. What happens in the 20%?
That's better than 90. So it's really times when I've given myself permission to listen to myself. Like I know that I'm tired. I know that I need this sleep. I know that I could stay up if I wanted, if I forced myself to, but I'm feeling that pull towards I'd like to go be in bed now. Like listening to that has made the difference. Or knowing, hey, I really want to get to X in the morning. Like there's a pool near my house that I like to swim at occasionally, and there's only certain hours where it's not super busy. It's not a very big pool, so it doesn't take much to get busy. And I prefer swimming, in a lane to myself. So when possible. So knowing what times that's available, it's either particularly early or right when people are going to have to go, like mostly go to work since I live close to it, I can walk there. So knowing that like I'm going to have to make this timeline helps too, because I know that like if I'm going to get this 7 hours of sleep, that's backing that out. I need to go to bed, now, and listening to, hey, every time I run myself ragged on this, I end up regretting this. What can I do to not do that? Have both been like probably the most key influences on the 20% where that does go as I would ideally like it from general energy patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense to have like the what's happening on the next day, or what do I want to accomplish after I get a good night's sleep piece. So what would it look like, or sorry, I'm trying to rephrase multiple questions into one instead of compounding. What would you need to actually start a healthy sleep routine?
I think I've already begun it. I think one thing that would probably help keep it a bit is maybe documenting. It probably would be helpful to start actually kind of keeping track of like how many hours I sleep, and then kind of track that against what is the feeling the next day, and try and get to like what is an ideal actual amount of sleep. Right now I'm just kind of guessing at what mostly feels well. I haven't really done a lot of experimentation with that. So part of it's keeping track of that. The other part of that comes to mind would be no, I lost it. That's the first one that would be, I guess, most important, is just kind of experimenting and being more aware of what really is the necessary amount.
Yeah, understandable, especially since you already use journaling and you see the point of journaling and self-reflection. That's a type of self-reflection on like what happens after I actually get the right amount of sleep and I go to bed at the time and wake up at the times that are most optimal for me. So how can you turn that would like to a I'm going to do it?
I think I just put it, so I've started using the reminders app pretty religiously, and that's been helping with clearing out just like mental organization, and just always having a more like, for a long time I think it was viable to keep most of my to-dos in my head, but like life has expanded in complexity beyond that, like, or my mental capacity has dropped. I don't know, one of the two is true, or both, I don't know, but either way I need these
The
things
lack of
written
sleep
down.
has reduced your mental capacity.
Ironically, yes, that probably
While
is a
life
huge
is
influence in
expanded.
that.
And
So putting that in the reminders app of like, as part of like, I remind myself like to journal every day. I remind myself to do things like write a little bit, and all of these. So if I have like just another reminder in the day that's like, also how much did you sleep last night, or track that, or maybe it's two reminders, one before, one at night, and one, or post a note at my bed, just trying to remember what time is it when I'm getting in bed, and then keep track of how long that is on the other side. So I think a daily reminder, so that it can be hard in the morning to remember when you fell asleep, or to remember to try and document that without some kind of prompts, just because I'm not awake yet. So maybe that reminder would help just push that and be like, oh, right, yes, okay, now that's really fresh in my mind. Here's how long it was.
And when would you like to start that?
Tonight. I'll put that on my reminders.
What could stand in the way?
The fact that we are going to help Rachel's grandparents put up a shelf tonight, which is usually going to be like, it's going to probably be a few hour endeavor and visits just to catch up with them. So that could stand in the way of getting to bed on time, for sure.
Right. What kind of support would help you?
I don't know that too much support's needed on this one. It's just kind of a reminder and checking in with myself, as much as remembering externally that I'm not using this podcast now as kind of a tattoo that I'm going to go do this. It's now my out loud commitment. So feel more committed to it, and just more aware of like, yeah, this is something that definitely is something that comes to mind immediately when you talk about those shoulds. I'm like, yeah, it's definitely sleep. So and that one actually feels more like no, you really need to do this. Not like you just should do it. Like this is something you need to choose to do as soon as possible to go help your life. So the importance feels there. It doesn't feel like it's an external obligation. It feels just like an internal imperative. So I feel pretty ready to go take that.
All right. Well, let us know how it goes.
Sounds good.
So I am going to ask you the same question you asked me. Are there any other physical influencers you would like to unpack or wrap it up?
I think I'm pretty aware of the other ones, and this is a good example. I think other ones would be another, 20 minutes.
The demons and the onions.
Yeah, then we're gonna find all the ogres.
Yeah. We need another Shrek movie for that one, so we'll wait for that. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So that's physical influencers. When you think about these things, watch your own language around what your shoulds, choose tos. How can you turn these into choose tos? What do you know that works for you? How can you create those circumstances for yourself? Those are all the helpful self-coaching questions that can put you in a good physical space. And sometimes it's a great place to start any kind of personal work, because it's fairly straightforward often to grasp what is physically happening to us.
Yep, definitely. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.